Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Brian Thatcher, and welcome to Mercy Unbound. It's a show that aims to provide hope, an avenue for healing, and one that will help you understand and then live the great mercy of God. With me today is a longtime friend. I haven't seen him for a while, but we've been friends for many years. Dan Lynch is a former judge. He's authored several books, did a video. He's director and founder of Danlash Apostles. The website is JKMI for Jesus King Mary Immaculate.com, JKMI.com. We're going to talk about his ministry, but we're really going to focus today also on something that's in the news every day, Ukraine, Russia, and we're going to tie this into the Blessed Mother and Jesus. And but before we get into it, it's interesting. Dan has written a couple books: Our Lady of Guadalupe, Hope for the World; Our Lady of America, Our Hope for the States. And that's what we've got to help people understand. There's no need to despair, be discouraged. We've got to keep the hope. We've got to keep our eyes on the finish line, which is Jesus Christ. And we've got Mary to help us walk and get closer to Jesus. And Dan's been doing this for many, many, many years. Before the show began, I was thinking, Dan, you're a former judge, and you always had to follow the law. But I hope when I pass that I won't see Jesus the judge, but Jesus the King of Mercy. So,
amen.
Welcome to Mercy Unbound today, Dan.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you for having me. We haven't been together since we went to a conference together in Hawaii several years ago for Divine Mercy and Our Lady of Guadalupe. Yes,
tell us a little bit about your ministry. You've been doing a lot of things with the Jesus and Mary for many years.
Yeah, well, I founded the Danlash Apostles in 1991, and we promote devotion to Our Lady of Guadalupe, Our Lady of America, Jesus, King of all nations, and St. John Paul II. Now, that's all on our website. We do most of it through visitations of their images, primarily the image of Our Lady of Guadalupe. We have a full exact size replica of that image, which is still in Mexico City. It's 3 feet by 6 feet. So it's you can see her over my shoulder on my wall. There's a small image of her. And she came to Mexico and brought the conversions of Mexico. People think, can a country be converted? Like Our Lady of Fatima asked us to pray for the conversion of Russia. And that raises a question, can a country be converted? Our Lady of Guadalupe converted Mexico in 1531 in 9 years. She appeared there to a saint, Saint Juan Diego, and then left her image on his cloak, a miracle, and said in her message to the Indians, I am one of you. She appeared as a mestiza. That's the combination of the Aztec Indian and the Spanish. It's mixed blood. They call her the Morenita, the little brown lady. And so it was like a melding of the races. All the antagonism had been ended because the Aztecs were on the verge of a civil war, of a war against the Spaniards, and they were still practicing human sacrifice. The bishop prayed for peace, and it came because she said to the Indians, I am one of you, and that she melted their hearts. She said, I want to manifest my son to you. So the Franciscans, who hadn't baptized hardly anybody in the last 20 years that they were there, 10 years after the conquest, people came from, all the Indians came from their villages to be baptized. Families, thousands and thousands. That was stupendous. You couldn't believe that. It really happened. And it was 9 million in 9 years. That's 3,000 a day for every day for 9 years. Now at Pentecost, Peter, he converted through his preaching 3,000. This is a novena of Pentecost for 9 years, every day, 3,000 a day, and that's 9 million. And then it's still a Catholic country. That's how a country can be converted. And that's our hopes for Russia. And that's what Our Lady of Fatima promised us. The whole future of the world, peace in the world, hinges on the conversion of Russia. It's a linchpin of peace. And if it's not converted, Our Lady said, they will spread their errors through the world, which they have done with communism. There will be annihilations of nations, which hasn't happened yet, but they're getting capable of it with their new nuclear weapons. And so we want to implore Our Lady of Fatima and Jesus, Christ the King, to bring peace to Ukraine, divine mercy to Ukraine, and the conversion of Russia. So in our mission, we have this image, as I said, that we bring around what we call visitations. We train parish teams to receive the image and organize them with their sponsor, the pastor, to go wherever a mother is needed. Bring this 6x3 image to nursing homes, hospitals, schools, prisons, churches, abortion centers, wherever, and miracles have abounded, signs, wonders, healings. It's been a beautiful story. It's been going, we'll celebrate our 31st anniversary of this image traveling the United States and the world this June 14th. And it's just, I call it the second greatest story ever told. And so one of the big pilgrimages we did with this image was to Russia via Fatima. We went on the 75th anniversary of the first apparition of Our Lady of Fatima. She appeared in 1917. We went there in 1992 on October 13th, the last day of her apparition, the 75th anniversary. And with the missionary image of Our Lady of Guadalupe, the full-size image, and the full-size image of Jesus, King of all nations, two huge images that led the processions through Fatima. And this is the largest airborne pilgrimage, I think, in the history of the world, especially to Russia. We organized it through Rosary Turton, the founder of the 101 Foundation, and she chartered two jumbo 747 planes. We filled them both. We had 1,000 people that we took, led by these images and the International Pilgrim Virgin statue of Our Lady of Fatima, which we took from Fatima to Russia. They'd never been to Russia, never been out of Fatima. They did try to get into Russia since 1947 without any luck. And then once the Berlin fall, we took advantage of that and brought these images and that statue to Russia. So when we got there, we didn't know what to expect. We said, well, let's go to Red Square. You know, we can pray at Red Square. So we go to Red Square, and it was all barricaded by a steel fence. And the priest next to me said, "It's open, Dan." I said, "Let's go for it." It was all barricaded off, the whole square, and there were cops all over there, but no people inside. So we marched in there in procession. I had a big, probably 6-foot cross that I led the procession with. I'll show you a picture of it if your viewers can see it here. And got to get it up there a little bit.
Yeah, move
there,
that a little higher.
There,
right there.
There. Now you can see me leading that. That's when I made my proclamation when I got to the end of the procession. This is the beginning of the procession. We're in Red Square. It's all empty except for us, processing on our way to St. Basil's Cathedral. And so I got out there, got a few hundred people behind me. I didn't know where I was going. So we leave it to the Spirit. And I just remember the song, you know, the Yellow Brick Road. I looked down, there was this huge yellow line. And then it flashed in my mind. I remembered that the Russians always showed off their strength with all their tanks on May 1st, okay? That was their day to show off their strength and the military might. And those lines were followed by the tank commanders. They would go down those yellow striped lines. So I said, let's follow the Yellow Brick Road. Had no idea where we were going. Processed down. I saw at the end St. Basil's Cathedral, and just before that, I saw a concrete platform. Actually, it was probably marble or something like that. And it had nine steps. It was circular. It had 9 steps, and I got to it, and I thought to myself, we're safe here. I'll run to the top and make the proclamation. So I ran up there with the images behind me. They came up to the top, and that's this picture here. As you can see, I'm at the top of that podium there, surrounded by the image of Jesus, King of all nations, and Our Lady of Guadalupe at the top of that, proclaiming Russia to be subject to Queen Mary and King Jesus. We proclaimed Jesus and Mary as King and Queen of Russia and all nations, and we claimed that we were there to claim Russia for the Immaculate Heart of Mary, as she had promised at Fatima. That was why we were there. And we prayed those prayers and left in safety from the square. And our tour bus driver said to us, that was amazing. That was a miracle. How'd you get in there? What did you? He's asking me all these questions. I just said, I followed the Spirit. And he said, do you know where you made that proclamation, that platform? He said, that is the platform from which the Russian czars used to issue their edicts to the Russian people. Proclamation by the state. I was making proclamation for God. And he said that there's a big tower next to you on the Kremlin wall that was about 100 yards away. He said that tower is Spassky Tower, which means Savior's Tower. So you were there representing our Savior, and you made that proclamation, and he said, it's a miracle. But that's how God can work. You trust him, you trust the Spirit, you don't know what you're doing, you surrender your total control, and you let go, and you let God. So that's what we did. And that was a beautiful, beautiful event. And I think it's still playing itself out now in history now, as we're begging people to turn to Our Lady of Fatima, and Christ the King to plead for mercy for Ukraine against the slaughter that's going on, the genocide, the millions of refugees. There's nothing ever happened like this in the history of the world, where innocent civilians day after day are being killed, and mass graves and fire pyres and all these threats from Putin. They get increasing every day about nuclear war. He's got what's called the Satan II missile, which can carry multiple warheads. And he says it has 6,500-mile range. He's tested it. Nobody can defend against it. He says it's defensive. Nobody can stop it. We can issue it, and we can go to England. We can go to France. We can go to Germany. And every day he's coming up with these warnings and threats, and he's talking like a megalomaniac. And also physically, he's going through all kinds of strange motions and gyrations that are being caught on film. You know, he's wincing, he's walking, he's stumbling. Something's really going on in that man. I hope it's a conversion, and that he's not just going to die, that he dies converted to Jesus. But he's making these threats, what he's capable of carrying out. And we have to be mindful. You know, nuclear war is possible. That's our big threat. That's why it's the key to peace. And there was a third secret of Fatima. Everyone thinks it was a big secret that things were going to be destroyed and annihilated and everything. That was not it. It was not a message. It was an apparition of an angel and Our Lady of Fatima. It's an apparition that Sister Lucia, the visionary, wrote down what she saw. So it's only on one page. There's all kinds of rumors going around. It wasn't disclosed. They were hiding it. The message was just her text of her vision. What she saw was an angel with a flaming sword holding up over his right head, over the world, the whole world in danger of subjection of the flaming threat of nuclear war, and Our Lady next to him with rays coming from her Immaculate Heart, which made him incapable of lowering that sword. So it's a symbolic image of God's mercy going through Our Lady's Immaculate Heart to stop the judgment and the chastisement of Russia and the world.
Oh,
and that's
okay.
what it really is.
Let me interrupt you there.
Yes.
So we've got this human war going on, thousands and thousands of innocents. It's despair, it's hopelessness if you watch the news, but this is as much a spiritual battle as a worldly battle, isn't it?
It's more of a spiritual battle than a material battle on the earth, you know, and even regarding that third secret vision that Sister Lucia wrote down, Cardinal Ratzinger, who later became Benedict XVI, he said, "This is no fanciful imagination. We have created our own weapons to make this all possible. We stand under a cloud, more or less, of a nuclear war." And that's what the whole third secret was about. And how do you stop that? The hope is you do what Our Lady of Fatima requested. Pray the daily rosary and practice the first Saturday devotion, whereby for 5 first Saturdays, you go to Mass and communion and confession within 8 days either way, and you say the rosary and you meditate on the rosary one mystery for 15 minutes. That's all she's asking, but it hasn't happened. And that's what we're in need of. And that's why I have a pledge on our website that people can go to at jkmi.com, Jesus King Missionary Image, and just scroll down the first page, go down the bottom of the page and sign the pledge. We are begging people to sign a pledge to do as best they are able to pray the daily rosary and practice the first Saturday devotion. And there are links there to explain to you how to do that. That's all Our Lady asked for. That's all she asked for in 1917. And ever since then, you know, it hasn't been fulfilled. Where the popes have consecrated Russia in different means, but never explicitly, and in union with all the bishops, as she's asked. Pope Francis just consecrated Russia and Ukraine in union with many of the bishops of the world, most of them probably. And sure, heaven accepts all these things. It's just never literally been done as Our Lady explicitly asked. The consecration by the Pope in union with all the bishops of the world of Russia, period. That was all she asked for. And somehow the world hasn't been able to get it together, but all these efforts have been honored by God.
I want to bring in a little divine mercy here, because even Faustina in her diary talks about Russia. And she said the Lord told her, "I cannot suffer that country any longer. And that if it had not been for the prayer of souls that are pleasing to God, that whole nation would have already been reduced to nothing." So Russia's an important part here in world peace, isn't it?
It's absolutely, it's the key. It's the key to world peace. It's right. The conversion, all the peace of the world depends upon the conversion of Russia. Yeah, and this is Jesus Christ coming from heaven to Saint Faustina in the 30s in Poland, okay, to give her this message. Many people have never even heard of this message. You wonder why did Our Lady want Russia converted? Because of the horrible things it's done. And Jesus is telling her how he suffered because of Russia. He's never named a country before that, and essentially is an enemy of Christ. And that's essentially what he's saying. I cannot suffer that country any longer. Do not tie my hands, my daughter. And he's saying it would have been reduced to nothing if it hadn't been for the prayers of souls like Saint Faustina. That's why the prayers are so part. What stopped that? The prayers of Saint Faustina, the prayers of divine mercy. That shows you the power of prayer, the infinite power of prayer. So why did he say that? Why did he say that? Well, these are some of the things he did. So he came to her in 1936 and gave her this message, how he suffered for Russia. Why? Starting in 1924, okay, 1 year, Russia liquidated 10 million kulaks. They were independent Russian farmers. 10 million by forced collectivization. 10 million gone. 1933, Russia confiscated and hoarded the Ukrainian grain harvest. Many people don't know this. This is Ukraine, 1933. It was a true genocide that he's starting again now through Vladimir Putin. It was a true genocide that resulted in the deaths by starvation of approximately 8 million Ukrainians. Deliberate starvation, stole all their grain, stole their seeds so they couldn't regrow the crops. Horrific, horrific. In 1934, they put a great purge of their own people. Anybody, it's all about power. Anybody that suspect of not agreeing with the power, the state that be, they're purged. Today they call it canceled, but they were killed. It lasted for 4 years, killed over 1 million human beings, and there were also approximately 2 million who died or were killed in the gulags, the slave labor camps. Look at this chain of history that's going on. In the 1940s, under Soviet communist dictatorship, the regime in Ukraine again, 1940s, what do they do there? They destroyed the Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church, 4 million members of it. It was outlawed. The bishops were martyred. Many people died, martyrs for the Ukrainian faith. And it's just, they exiled them, they arrested them, and the killings continued. And Our Lady warned all about this at Fatima. Unless my requests are granted, Russia will spread her errors throughout the world. And so they tallied it up, the New York Times, February 4th, 1989. The New York Times reported that the total Russian victims up to that date total about 20 million people. And that's years ago, it's 40 years ago. What have they done since then? They've committed international aggression against Georgia, Belarus, Azerbaijan, Crimea, and now the rest of Ukraine. Now, the funny is that, Putin says that Ukraine is really Russia. It's really Russia. That's when he has this dream of expanding the Russian Empire to wherever he wants it to end. And everything he says is a lie. He brought those tanks to the border of Ukraine and said, oh, we're just doing exercises. I have no intention of invading Ukraine. Liar to the whole world. The whole world knows he's lying. And then he gets away with it and the media doesn't report it. And
Dan, let me
and on
jump
it
in.
goes.
Let me ask you though, you've got all these things and they're still going on today because I'm reading where they're taking men and little children, infants off to Russia from Ukraine. So this is still like history's just continuing. But wasn't Russia the first country to legalize abortion?
Yes, absolutely. And they lead the world in abortions today. The statistics are phenomenal. Most Russian women average 5 to 7 abortions apiece, And of course, they have a demographic winner now. They don't have a population because they're boarding them off, and all that added to the horror. But getting back to his claim, and when the media picks this up, well, Russia really has a claim to Ukraine. They do not have any claim to Ukraine. And Pope St. John Paul II went there in 2001, okay? And he's answered this whole question. It's beautiful what he said there. He made a farewell address in 2001 to the Ukrainian people. Thank you, Ukraine, who defended Europe in your untiring and heroic struggle against invaders, which includes today's invaders, the Russians. They have a history of invasions there, but they always stood up for the faith. The Pope continues, it has been my longstanding wish to express my admiration and appreciation for the heroic witness that you have borne during the long winter of persecution in the past century. My hope is that Ukraine will be able fully to become a part of the Europe, which will take in the entire continent from the Atlantic to the Urals. That's the Pope's hope for Ukraine. You know who else has a hope like that? Vladimir Putin wants Russia to have the entire continent from the Urals to Atlantic, the other way around, okay? The Urals in the East Atlantic. The same language that the Pope used that he would hope Ukraine would have, they're claiming it for themselves. The Pope continues, Christians know that they are by right an integral part of the Ukrainian nation. They are so by virtue of a 1,000-year history. And most people deny this history and don't know it. Our Lady is Queen of Ukraine. Ukraine was the first country in history ever to consecrate itself to Our Lady in Ukraine. They've got a 1,000-year history. They're not newcomers on the block. So the Pope says, it began with the baptism of Vladimir and Kievan Rus in 988 in the waters of the Dnieper River. But they are especially so today, the Ukrainians, because of the baptism of blood, which they received in the course of the tremendous persecutions of the 20th century. In those terrible years, countless were the witnesses to the faith, not only Catholics, but also Orthodox and Reformed Christians who underwent deprivations of all kinds for the love of Christ, in many cases to the sacrifice of their very own lives. So Ukraine has a legitimate claim to its own country and its history and its martyrdoms and its persecutions, which are being continued today by Russia, with the most unjust war probably in the history of the world. Unannounced, unjust invasion and the horrors that they're doing over there, Pope Francis has spoken about. He went to, he had a general, this is just this last month, April 6th. The Pope, he held up a Ukrainian flag that came from the city of Bucha. He said it's a memorial of what he called the horrific cruelties against unarmed women and children in Bucha. This is in Ukraine. This is all innocent civilians that the Russian soldiers were going about annihilating. The Pope said, the blood of innocent children, civilians, cries out to heaven for an end to the atrocities of this war. Recent news about the war in Ukraine, instead of bringing relief and hope, attest to new atrocities, such as the Bucha massacre, increasingly horrific cruelties carried out even against unarmed civilians, women, and children. They are victims whose innocent blood cries out to heaven and implores an end to this unjust war. Let us silence the weapons. Let us stop sowing death and destruction. Let's not forget the people of Ukraine. So we are forgetting them, you know, it's just getting to be old things. Every day is the same thing. More people dead, more dead bodies, more mass graves. Nothing's changing, except the Ukrainian people will not surrender their country or their faith. We have new martyrs coming out every day. The cries go out to heaven, and we have to amplify those cries with our prayers. The simple prayer that Our Lady of Fatima asks for, the daily rosary, and the practice of the First Friday devotion. So
Dan, let me jump in
ahead.
a second. Let me ask you though, Ukrainian people are strong-willed, they're beautiful people, and they're having all this suffering. Haven't you been to Ukraine as well as Russia?
No, I haven't been to Ukraine.
I haven't been to Ukraine.
Yes, no. But a friend of mine had. I know a friend of mine was a mystic. His name was Joseph Karelia. And curiously enough, he and I both shared the same spiritual director, Bishop Roman Danlash, a Ukrainian Catholic bishop in Toronto. And Joseph lived in Toronto. Joseph was a Ukrainian Catholic. So he invited me to his home. So I spent some time in his home with him and the bishop. And Joseph had heard about, actually, he was a survivor of the Russian Gulag. You know, they tried to freeze him to death.
Yeah.
And Mary protected him. And they were watching through the window how he could survive. It was ice in the room, ice air. There's nothing else at all. And they were watching him die, but he wasn't dying. He was praying to Mary. And then they finally went in. He was all warm. He survived. And he said, what'd you do? What'd you do? He said, Our Lady just hugged me and protected me. I didn't freeze. Finally, he escaped so many times and tried to escape. They just let him go. But he heard Our Lady was appearing in Ukraine. This is in the late 80s, okay, late 1980s. And by the thousands, people were seeing by the thousands. Up to the biggest count was 10,000. It went on for weeks. And so he said, I got to go. So Joseph went to the Ukraine, his old homeland, and he saw it himself. It was by a little chapel, a wooden chapel out in the woods. Thousands and thousands of people. The Russian KGB was there trying to break it up, and they would take some pictures of her. There was no message, but she was above the sky, appearing to all these thousands of people. The mother of Ukraine, watching over her children in Ukraine. And there she was. And then Joseph got a message from Our Lady. If I can find it here amongst my papers that I'm rattling around. This is what Our Lady told him. Quote, this is Our Lady to Joseph Torelli. In order to save Russia and the whole world from godless evil, you must convert Russia to Christ the King. The conversion of Russia will save Christian culture in the West and will be a push for Christianity throughout the world. But the kingdom of Christ the King shall establish itself to the reign of the Mother of God. He got that message. It's the Fatima message. He'd never been to Fatima. I don't even know if he knew about Fatima. He must have, but that was it. And he's repeating the same message. And then after that, he went to a private meeting in a home. I knew the lady down in Connecticut. And this is reported by Michael Brown of Spirit Daily. At that meeting that he went to, there was a small group of people, if I can find amongst my papers here, pardon my fumbling around, but it's a very important message. And where are you, Joseph?
You know, I may remember that, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't he warn about watch out for a man named Vladimir?
That's exactly what he said. He said he's a very evil man and he'll bring trouble to the world. And that was before Vladimir Putin assumed authority in Russia. And that was a clear warning. And that's a clear message that was reported by Michael Brown. And so, yeah, well, he's proving himself, isn't he? Putin is proving the message, that's for sure.
You know,
unfortunately,
Pope Francis, when he said, may we be tireless in praying. And so many people, and in my life at times, I've been a skeptic too, you know, about praying, but the older I get and the more I've seen that prayer can move mountains, and we really have to pray and get down on our knees. Yep. But that requires humility, and many in America don't have much of that in our materialistic society.
No, we want to use human means, materialistic means, and not the means of God. Many times when Our Lady has said in apparitions, prayer and fastings can stop wars. And I just found that quote from Joseph. Yeah, this is what he said, Joseph Torelli. Watch out for Russia, and specifically a man named Vladimir. He is very evil. That's what he reported. And he is going to start a conflict. And that was reported in the 1990s before anybody ever heard of Vladimir. And that's the way it is, and that's the way it's going, and that's the way he's proving himself. And he says, this is all disinformation, Putin says. It's fake news. And then he says, you know, anybody who's in any country who's going to interfere in Ukraine, we're going to have a lightning response, you know. We're going to do unspeakable things, unheard of things you haven't seen. All these allusions to nuclear warfare, right? And he says, we haven't done any atrocities at all. So, he'll listen to this. These are all quotes from reliable people. Ukraine Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba wrote, the Bucha massacre was deliberate. It was Russians' aim to eliminate as many Ukrainians as they can. You don't like that one? I got another one. Journalist Sergei Medvedev said, the scenes we now see in Ukraine recall other third millennium Russian atrocities. He said, looking at the photos from Irpin and Bucha, you understand that these are the same people, Russians, who torture in colonies, pre-trial detention centers during interrogations, the same hands tied behind their backs, the same culture of violence and impunity. This is Russia. This is the norm. Then President Zelensky, he went to, he said he detailed the war's alleged atrocities in a speech to the United Nations Security Council. He said, Russian forces killed entire families, adults and children, and they tried to burn the bodies. Civilians were crushed by tanks while sitting in their cars in the middle of the road just for their fun of it, just for their pleasure. They cut limbs, slashed their throats. Women were raped and killed in front of their children. On and on it goes. We have a former Defense Intelligence Agency officer in America. He said, it is absolutely not an accident that the Russians are fighting this way. This is 100% intentional. It's not a lack of military discipline. This is Russia. This is the Russia we don't read about and know about, with all the, and it's not the Russian people. It's the Russian state. Mary's not pleading for the conversion of each and every individual Russian being. There are many Christians in Russia. She's pleading for the conversion of the state operatives who bring on these horrors to the world, for their conversion of heart. She's concerned about their souls as well. And hopefully,
again, I want to get back to something though, because I think we got to get focused back on the solution. We know we got the problem.
Yes.
We have to get back to the solution. You mentioned praying the Rosary, and
every day.
Every day.
Not just occasionally.
Yeah. Well, it's like the joke, the Blessed Mother says, pray the Rosary. I haven't heard from you in decades.
Oh, that's a cute one.
But the other thing you mentioned about the first Saturday devotions, there may be people watching this show that don't know what that is. Explain to us the first Saturday devotion.
These are the two things that Our Lady asked of us at Fatima. She asked the Pope to do the consecration of Russia. For us, she asked only these two things: pray the daily Rosary. Everybody knows that's familiar with that, and practice the first Saturday devotion. The first Saturday devotion is, as she asked for us, for 5 first Saturdays in a row, not just any 5 Saturdays. It has to be the first Saturday of the month in a row for 5 months. On each of those days, go to church, Mass, and receive communion with confession 8 days either way of that day. Pray the daily Rosary that day, and sit and meditate on one of the mysteries in addition to the daily Rosary. Meditate. Shut up, still your mind, and think in deep in silence for at least 15 minutes. We should be able to handle 15 minutes, but in this distracted age, it's even difficult to do that. So it's a sacrifice to do that for a lot of people. They're so fidgety. Where's my phone and everything like that? Sit, and what does God say? Be still and know that I am God.
Well, Dan, if people want to go to your website, they can find the sign a petition, the pledge to pray for Ukraine and the conversion of Russia.
Just go to the homepage, JKMI, Jesus King Mary Immaculate.com. You'll see the homepage. Scroll down the bottom. There's a picture in there, and it's a pledge. And it says sign the pledge. You hit that, and then you go to the pledge page, which is the pledge. It's not everybody can do it. It's not mandatory. If you miss something, you're not going to get chastised by God. It's in the languages, please pray the daily Rosary as you are able. Some people just can't do it every day, as you are able. Everyone knows what they're able to do. Do what you can. Try to practice the first Saturday devotion as best as you can. So you're not signing your life away by signing this pledge. It's just giving you an encouragement to do that, because that's the answer to the whole thing. All these horrors that we've been talking about can be resolved by what she asked for in 1917. And we're way down the road from 1917, and we're on the cusp of nuclear war by the only country who can annihilate the nations that she prophesied. This is really serious business. So I plead with you people, go to the website, scroll down the page, sign the pledge, and start practicing the first Saturday devotion as you're able, and singing and saying the daily Rosary. This is what's so sweet to Our Lady's heart. A Rosary crusade saved Christianity at the Battle of Lepanto. Okay, the Christian fleet was outnumbered. This is back in the 50, I can't remember the date now. Anyway, 1500s.
1500s, yeah.
1500s, and the Christian fleet was outmanned, outgunned. The Muslim came down. Ali Pasha had the wind at his back. He had all the advantages. They prayed the Rosary. The Pope asked Christianity to pray the Rosary. Okay, only for a couple of weeks. And the winds changed. The Muslim ships went into each other, crashed into each other. They released 10,000 Christian galley slaves that were rowing those big trimarine boats, and that was the end of the invasion of Europe. It never happened again, and they were never able to invade Europe again. So that was all through a Rosary crusade. That's the power of prayer. There was all. They destroyed themselves. The Christian fleet didn't have to do anything except retrieve their prisoners.
Well, I think the answer, as you said, is the Blessed Mother always takes us to Jesus, and Jesus is the answer. And I'm thinking of the quote in the diary. Jesus said, mankind will not have peace until it learns to trust in his mercy. And
Yes.
it's the Christian faith that's going to save us through this, in this battle, which is a spiritual battle.
And if you don't accept my mercy, I will be forced to use my justice. Justice and chastisements are God's last word. It's not an act of meanness or punishment. It's punishment to wake people up. If the mercy doesn't get you, the chastisement is also the salvation of your soul. So let us plead for mercy for Ukraine and peace on earth, goodwill to men.
Amen. Well,
Amen.
Dan, I want to thank you, Judge Dan Lynch. I want to thank you for joining me today on Mercy Unbound. You've been spreading the love of the Blessed Mother for mankind for many, many years, and Jesus, and keep up the great work. And I hope to see you back on Mercy Unbound.
I'll be back. And hello and goodbye to all our visual listeners out there and Mercy Unbound land. Keep watching the good Dr. Brian. He's a good one.
Thank you, Dan.
Take it from me. God bless you all.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Please subscribe to our YouTube channel for the video portion. The podcast can be heard at anchor.fm/drbrian, Bryan Thatcher, Thatcher, and on all the major podcast forums. I would love to speak at your church or conference, and please consider supporting our efforts to spread the truth to a hurting world. Thank you again. And for more information, go to the website at drbrianthatcher.com.